Hi, it's Dr. Robyn MacKillop with Get That GED, and today we are going to do some social studies language arts. And these are pretty typical of what you'll see on both tests. So let's get going. I'm going to switch my camera. And that doesn't help. I didn't have my camera set up. There we go. That's a little better. All right, this one, let me clear it. It looks blurry. Okay, so this is a budget for national parks, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. This is a newer writing, 2008. So it should be fairly clear in the way the language is used. And it kind of looks like, oh, it is. It's a newspaper article. So it'll be much easier to read than some of the dated political documents or governmental documents. And what we're going to do before we read is we're going to check the questions and see if there's anything we can answer without reading the entire thing. So what does the use of the word stingy in paragraph 2 reveal about the author's point of view about the budget appropriations for national parks? Even though they point us to paragraph 2, we may need to read more, although we could probably figure it out just by reading 2. And then the second one, according to the passage, the author of the editorial believes that the legislature should. That one kind of forces us to read. Which statement best expresses the author's overall point of view? We're going to have to read it. And then according to the passage, with which statement the author most likely agree. So based on these 3, we're going to have to read it. Fortunately, it's not a really long reading. So let's start up here. One piece of legislation that deserves a serious push is the National Park Service Centennial Initiative. A brainchild of Dirk Kempthorne, the Interior Secretary, the initiative would use the years leading up to the park system's 100th birthday in 2016 to raise $1 billion in private money and match that with $1 billion in federal money, above and beyond normal appropriations, to rejuvenate the national parks. As recent visitors can attest, the parks need all the help they can get. Stingy budget appropriations, that's that word from question 1, stingy budget appropriations and decades of deferred maintenance have taken a toll on everything from park roads to day-to-day operations. In his brief tenure, Mr. Kempthorne has done several good things for the parks, including killing a potentially harmful rewrite of the services management policies that would have promoted inappropriate commercial and recreational activities at the expense of conservation. He wants now to provide a special revenue stream by using the promise of a federal match to entice to help underwrite vital projects. The idea was so appealing that the House Natural Resource Committee approved it by a voice vote. It has languished ever since. The solution seems ridiculously obvious. The budget office should find the offsets, and increase in park concession fees would do the trick, and the Democratic leadership should schedule a vote. We predict that the verdict would be overwhelmingly positive, and the Senate would follow suit. The parks and their millions of visitors would be the winners, and Congress could show that it can get things done, even in an election year. All right, so clearly, what would you say about the author's point of view? All about rescuing or saving the parks, or something else? So let's check the first question. What does the use of the word stingy reveal about the author's point of view about the budget appropriations for national parks? And it was right here. Budget appropriations and decades of deferred maintenance have taken a toll. Does he believe the appropriations have been unfairly small, delayed too long, potentially harmful, or misused?
It's A.
Perfect. Yeah, there's not enough money going to the parks. According to the passage, the author of the editorial believes the legislature should withhold voting, find the money to back the National Park Service Centennial Initiative, hold another meeting, or demonstrate the importance of the National Park Service by campaigning for conservation. Two of those you can get rid of right away. He certainly didn't want to withhold voting. So you can cross A off. He wanted it to go forward, so he wasn't interested in delaying. Maybe hold another committee meeting. No, he wants things to move. So get rid of A, get rid of C. Now it's between B, find the money, or D, demonstrate the importance. And this is what the author believes. So we come down here to this last paragraph. So
The mystery.
Say that again.
The mystery.
Yeah.
For D.
Yep. It's important to demonstrate the importance of the National Park Service by campaigning for conservation. Absolutely true. Is he wanting to find more money? Budget office should find the offsets and increase in park concession fees. Matching 1 billion with 1 billion. What do you think? D is absolutely true. Is B slightly better for this question? These are tough. This is what GED does. It gives you two really good answers, and they're both, you could justify either one, but one is just slightly better because it fits a little bit better with what the entire article is talking about. This is vital. This is even more important because you can do this when you have the money. So the answer to this one is B. And you can see the nuance. It was easy to get rid of A. It was easy to get rid of C. So you didn't have to look at those two again. You just had to bounce between these two. Both are absolutely true. This is important. This is important. This will happen when we have money. Crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
if we do D, it's account correct or not?
No, it would, the correct answer is B.
Wow, that means we're gonna miss points.
Yeah, and unfairly so, because you're correct. He does think this is important. But even more than that, it's the money. This happens when we have them. So it's something you'll get used to. The more you see these, you'll start to identify, you'll know immediately when you've got two good answers and you find the nuance in one of them that makes it the best answer. It's a struggle, and it'll happen in both social studies and language arts and a little bit of science. All right, let's try this one. You did well. This is absolutely true. It's just annoying that it's not the right answer. Which statement best expresses the author's overall point of view? Does he think representatives are doing all they can? Does he think the initiative deserves positive attention? Does he think management policies need to be rewritten? Or does he think the Park Service has an above average budget that should be maintained? And go back to the money. We know this is about getting more funding. So knowing that, which one of these seems like the best? We can get rid of D. He doesn't think there's enough money. Was he actually talking about policies?
About the budget.
Yeah, so it's probably going to be, well, actually, we can toss this out because he doesn't think all the reps are doing what they should be doing. He said that Democratic leadership should schedule, which means they're not quite doing what they can now. So you land on B. And again, it's the money one. That initiative deserves positive attention because it'll get more money into the national parks. So this is a really good, this is not a theme question, but the theme to this article is that in order to save the national parks, we need an influx of cash, right? There needs to be more funding to protect the parks. And so far, the questions have all kind of landed on something related to funding or finance. And that would be the theme, the underlying theme, even though they're not asking you to identify a theme. If you can figure out what they're mostly talking about, sometimes that helps a lot. Because, you know, like this one, they just gave you two really good answers. This one, you could probably land on the right one just because of the way these other three are written. But, or this one, these two were good. This one, you could land on the right one. All right, let's try the last one. According to the passage, with which statement would the author most likely agree? The federal government works quickly. The Democratic leadership should not vote. The National Park Service needs more support from the federal government, or the park should rely on visitors to get more funding.
The C?
Yes, good job. Yeah, the government doesn't work quickly at all. We all know that. It's very slow. And he thinks that Democrats should vote, so that one's out. This one makes the most sense. He wants federal funds. They're national parks. The federal government should be protecting them. And then visitors, there's not enough visitors to upkeep. Unless we were paying $50 a person. And nobody would do that. So this is a really good example of how this one especially, how you can get it down to two questions and they're both so good, but there's just something that pushes that one over the top, and it's the money portion. Because the theme to this whole thing is getting more money for parks. All right, Richard Nixon. Most of you are probably not old enough to know who he was. I think I was born when he was president. And this is from 1952. That's way before I was born. He was not president in 1952. He was president in 1972. So this is interesting because this is going way back. This is a lifetime politician. Let's check the questions. What statement best summarizes, oh man, we're gonna have to read. When we get questions about summarizing, we have to read it. And this one's a long one. I don't love that you have to read all of this, but you'll know when you get to the test if you've got to really dig in or if you can just hit certain paragraphs. All right, so let's try this one. I come to you tonight as a candidate for the vice presidency and as a man whose honesty and integrity have been questioned. Now, the usual political thing to do when charges are made against you is to either ignore them or deny them without giving details. I believe we've had enough of that in the United States, particularly with the present administration in Washington, D.C. To me, the office of the vice presidency of the United States is a great office, and I feel that the people have got to have confidence in the integrity of the men who run for that office and who might obtain it. I have a theory, too, that the best and only answer to a smear or an honest misunderstanding of the facts is to tell the truth. And that's why I'm here tonight. I want to tell you my side of the case. I'm sure that you have read the charge and you've heard that I, Senator Nixon, took $18,000 from a group of my supporters. The question is, was it morally wrong? I say it was morally wrong if any of that $18,000 went to Senator Nixon for my personal use. I say it was morally wrong if it was secretly given and secretly handled. And I say it was morally wrong if any of the contributors got special favors for the contributions that they made. And now to answer those questions, let me say this. Not 1 cent of the $18,000 or any other money of that type ever went to me for personal use. Every penny of it was used to pay for political expenses that I did not think should be charged to the taxpayers of the US. It was not a secret fund. Do you think that when I or any other senator makes a political speech, has it printed, should charge the printing of that speech and the mailing of that speech to the taxpayers? Do you think, for example, when I say, or any other senator makes a trip to his home state to make a purely political speech, that the cost of that trip should be charged to the taxpayers? Do you think when a senator makes political broadcasts that the expense of those broadcasts should be charged to taxpayers? Well, I know what your answer is. It's the same answer that the audience gives me whenever I discuss this particular problem. The answer is no. The taxpayer should not be required to finance items which are not official business, but which are primarily political business. So what he's doing here is he's giving his side of an accusation. He was accused of taking money. And he's saying, well, I did take the money, but it was for politics. It was so I could write speeches and have them printed. It was so I could do broadcasts, and because that stuff shouldn't be paid for by the taxpayer. So knowing that, let's see if we can do these questions. What statement best summarizes Nixon's reasons for making the speech? Did he want to question the charges made against him? Did he want to do the political thing by ignoring or denying? Did he want to accuse the present administration of wrongdoing? Or did he want to present details about his side of the charges?
Reason details. D.
Yes, perfect. He wanted to present his side. He didn't deny it. He was given the 18,000 from somebody, and he did not deny that. So yeah, he just wanted to say why it was okay that he took it. What statement best summarizes the last sentence in paragraph 2? And that would be, to me, the office of the vice presidency is a great office, and I feel that the people have got to have confidence in the integrity of the men who run for that office and who might obtain it. So does Nixon believe that he should be elected vice president? That people should trust those who hold the important office of vice president? That he himself has the integrity and inspires the people's confidence? Or that the vice presidency is an important office? So that's based on this right here.
How about B?
Perfect. Yep, people should be able to trust those who are running for vice president. And this is interesting that it was in 1952, because this could have been pulled out of the US political system in the last 20 years easily. Things have not changed very much. They've just maybe gotten a little more caustic. And then this one, which statement best summarizes Nixon's view about what would make taking the money morally wrong? This is a poorly written sentence. This is the part you need. Taking the money would be morally wrong if it were used personally, contributed secretly, or guaranteed special treatment, if the taxpayers had paid it, if it were used for printing and mailing, or if he did not declare the money on his tax returns. So he thinks it would be wrong to take that money if, which one of these did he say would have been bad?
A.
A.
Yes, it would have been bad if it was used personally, contributed secretly, or guaranteed special treatment. Perfect.
It is correct, right?
A is correct. Good job. And that was this really long paragraph where he kept kind of asking the same question. Down in here. And what's troublesome is he also talks about the taxpayers, but this is the correct one because he said flat out at some point, oh, right here, I say it was morally wrong if the contributors got special favors secretly given or used personally. So perfect. Good job. These are not easy, especially when you're reading something that you're not necessarily familiar with. You know, I certainly had never read this prior to teaching it. So what statement best summarizes Nixon's explanation of why he took the money? Did he take it as a result of a misunderstanding? Did he need the money to cover certain personal expenses? He knew that nothing was morally wrong, or he took the money for political expenses, which taxpayers should not have to cover.
Where we find the answer for this question, like should we read the passage again or just so?
It's actually right in this one.
Okay.
D.
Yeah. He said the money, it was okay to take it because it was for political expenses like his speech printing, broadcasts, you know, radio and TV broadcasts. And that taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. So it was a private donation to cover political expenses. Excellent, you guys. This is not easy. This was a lot of reading. And it was, you know, a speech made by a man that very few of you are probably particularly familiar with. He was the second president to be impeached. And he resigned before it went through the Senate because he would have been impeached. But he said, I quit. All right. Excellent, excellent. So here, we're going to check the question, separate classrooms for boys and girls. Most logical conclusion drawn from paragraph 3. How are paragraphs 2 and 3 connected? According to this passage, which conclusion best reflects the author's viewpoint? And what evidence from the passage best supports the author's conclusion about separate classrooms? So this one sort of points you where to read, but you may end up having to read the whole thing. I think this one you can probably, no, you probably need to read it because you need to know what his point of view is. All right, so let's take a look up at the top. I got to take a drink. All right. If schools shortchange girls, why is it surprising when the tests show that they're doing less well? It isn't just the PSATs where 18,000 boys generally reach the top categories and only 8,000 girls do. While the gap is narrowed, boys also outscore girls on 11 of the 14 College Board achievement tests and on the ACT exams and SATs. It is possible to jimmy selection standards to make sure girls win more scholarships, but equal results don't count for much if those results are forced. Instead of declaring equality, society should be advancing it. The challenge isn't to get more scholarships for baton twirlers, but to get more baton twirlers to take up advanced mathematics. How old is this? And it's interesting that baton twirlers are assumed to only be girls. 1994, it's not that old. But that's a very stereotypical term. Do you guys know what batons are? The things you twirl? Like those, It's really cool. Sometimes they have fire on the ends of them. But a baton twirler doesn't mean it's a girl. Boys can be baton twirlers. One place it happens is in girls' schools and women's colleges. Sometimes separate isn't equal, it's better. Changing the way teachers teach in co-ed schools, changing the textbooks to make sure they talk about women as well as men, educating parents about raising daughters. All of these things make sense since most girls will be educated in co-ed classrooms. But we've been talking about them for a decade, and the problem of gender bias stubbornly persists. In the meantime, for many girls, single-sex education is working. The evidence, though scant, is promising. In Ventura, California, the public high school has begun offering an all-girls Algebra 2 course. The girls, one teacher says, think so little of their ability that the teacher spends her time not only teaching math, but building self-confidence, repeatedly telling the girls that they're smart and that they can do it. I've seen this work. I did this myself. I had a GED math class with only women, and they did great. Much better than when the classes were co-ed, because they didn't feel embarrassed to raise their hands and speak up. And sometimes when you're in a classroom full of boys just take over. And that's a generalization. And I think I have mostly women today. Do I have any young men here? It's an interesting phenomenon, and they've done a lot of studies on whether or not they should separate males and females, especially for math and science. Which is the most logical conclusion to draw from paragraph 3? So that was down here. The evidence, though scant, which means there's not a ton of evidence, but there's some.
C.
Evidence from the few schools that have offered all girls classes is promising. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. And this isn't always true, but it's generally true. And it's the way US education is structured. It needs to be changed. It needs to be much more equitable than it is for all people.
C is correct, right?
For this one?
No, for the
Oh, yes, you were absolutely correct. C was the right.
Okay.
How are paragraph 2 and 3 connected? So here they're talking about what they can do. Here's an example of how it worked. They tried it and it worked. So does 3 summarize the information from 2? Does 3 provide an example for 2? Does 3 draw a conclusion? Or does 3 explain the focus?
How about the C?
Draws a conclusion.
D.
Yes, it provides an example. Because they talk about how it could work, then they give you an example of where it worked. They tried it and it worked.
The whole answer is similar. It's so confusing.
Yes, and I don't like these kinds of answers because you're reading the same stuff over and over. 3 summarizes 2, 3 provides, 3 draws, 3 explains. It's a lot. It's a lot to dig through, especially when you're under time constraints. I don't love it. All right.
There is any way to we can skim the passage, or no? We should like all read, or
I would suggest learning to skim, because you don't need all the information in here. Really, you didn't need much of this one, but it's the introduction. So if you could just run through this without reading every word. Gap narrowed, boys outscore. Okay, challenge isn't to get more scholarships. So we haven't even used this entire paragraph. It's just sort of setting the stage for these two, and it didn't do that great a job of it. You needed this one. And then you could see evidence, Ventura, they did it. So this is really the bulk of what you need for all of these questions, but you're not necessarily going to know that. So if you practice skimming, and that means looking down the paragraph and letting words kind of hit your eyes. Like if you go down this one, girls' schools, separate, changing teachers, changing textbooks, talk about women, raising daughters, co-ed classrooms. We've talked about it for a decade. Gender bias exists. So there are ways to do it without reading every word and getting the idea of what it is. Then you can clarify it based on the question they give you. Does that make any sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the more you can avoid reading, the better, because if you read everything on the language arts or the social studies test, you'd run out of time. So there are going to be times you have to skip things. And it's really good when they give you, when they say in paragraph 3, because then you can go directly to paragraph 3. It's when they do this that you kind of have to read both.
Both, okay.
But again, skim them. According to this passage, which conclusion best reflects the author's point of view? So the author was very much for separating girls and boys. Math and science are more important for girls than they are for boys. She didn't really say that, did she?
No.
So we can get rid of A. She thinks it's important for both of them. She just thinks they should learn it separately. Girls may do better in math and science if they learn in an all-girl classroom. She does kind of allude to this. So let's give that a maybe. Girls deserve to win more scholarships based on standardized test scores. She never said that.
C.
Yeah, she said boys tend to score higher. And then girls perform as well or better than boys. And we know that's not true. So these two are gone. This one, she did not talk about at all. So it's B. Does that make sense? And then last one, what evidence from the passage best supports the author's conclusion about separate classrooms? For many girls, single-sex education is working. That is a good one. Let's leave that as a maybe. The teacher spends her time not only teaching math, but also building self-confidence. They mentioned it, but let's wait on that one. Equal rights don't count for much if those results are forced. She said that, but not sure that that best supports her conclusion, which was let girls learn this in an all-girls classroom. And changing textbooks to make sure they talk about women as well as men, educating parents about raising daughters, da, 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 da.
D.
So is it?
D.
Yeah, I like D. Because if you do those things, you are flattening the playing field. You're making it equitable for all students. And that's important. Everybody should be able to learn in the fashion that makes the most sense to them. And that's something that helps do that. Good job. That was an interesting story. It wasn't super long, but you know, the questions can be complicated. And when they phrase them like this, how are 2 and 3 connected? That's an open-ended question. So you really have to look at these and see if you can eliminate some. Because 3 didn't really summarize. 2 said, this is what could happen. This is what should be done. This one was an example. We did it. We did it in this classroom and it worked. So you can get rid of summarize. There's your example. So put a big maybe on that. Did it draw a conclusion? It really didn't. Especially right here, the evidence, though scant. That means there is evidence, but not a lot. It hasn't been studied as often as it should have. So you can get rid of C. It explains the focus. It didn't really do that. So you land back on B. Provides an example. All right. Here's a very different style of reading. This one's kind of funny. NBA officiating goes kindergarten. NBA is the National Basketball Association. I'm certain some of you are fans. This was written in 2013. It was also a newspaper article. So this is an opinion piece. All right. In the first sentence of paragraph 3, the author uses the phrase sick to my stomach. How would the tone of this sentence change if he had used the word upset instead? So let's go check it out and see if we can answer it without doing a lot of reading. So first sentence, paragraph 3, they number them, which is really nice. But every double foul, ridiculous, flagrant, and soft technical that these officials call makes me sick to my stomach. So every double foul, ridiculous, flagrant, and soft technical that these officials call makes me sick to my stomach or makes me upset. If you changed sick to my stomach to upset, would it be less upbeat, more threatening, softened, or sarcastic? And this is what basketball officials call. So you don't have to worry.
What's the sarcastic meaning? The D one?
Sarcastic would be when somebody says, oh, so you like being in car wrecks. They're being sarcastic. You don't really like it. But, you know, if you had a friend who kept getting into car accidents, someone might be flippant and say, oh, so you like getting into car wrecks? No, not at all. Just he might be a bad driver. So sarcastic doesn't really, it's not really helpful. And it can be really mean. And this guy, his tone, if you read the whole thing, he is not at all happy with basketball officials. He thinks they don't know what they're doing. Hence the title. Basketball officiating goes kindergarten. That would be, you know, the officials act like 5-year-olds, but he's the one acting like a 5-year-old. And that's good too, because that kind of gives you an idea that this one doesn't make sense. So you can cross off D. The calls these officials make me sick to my stomach, or the calls the officials make are upsetting. Is that less upbeat? Was this upbeat at all? Happy? He doesn't sound particularly happy, does he?
No.
Yeah, so get rid of A. The tone would be more threatening. So if he said upset instead of sick to my stomach, is that more threatening or a little less?
More.
More.
And then if he was upset rather than sick to his stomach, would that be softened or would that be even worse?
How about D? No D?
So the B.
No D. Yeah, D and A are out.
B. B.
You like threatening?
How about C?
Yes.
I like C because, believe it or not, I mean, the person who wrote this is mad. And so he is a little bit threatening throughout anyway, because he's just mad. But if he said, rather than that makes me sick to my stomach, that's a really strong emotional statement. And if he said instead, oh, I'm so upset by their calls, that brings it down a notch. And you can even hear it in my voice when I say it. Oh, that makes me sick to my stomach. Oh, that makes me really upset. See the difference?
Then it will be C.
Yeah, it'll be C. Yeah, it softens his tone just a little bit. I mean, he's still unhappy, but he's not being a jerk about it. And sometimes if you are able, depending on where you're testing, if you can say things out loud like that, it will help a lot. It just depends on if you're in a testing center and you have private rooms. The testing center where I am, all the rooms are private. You don't test in a big open room. You go into a little room with a computer and everything you need. So you can actually read out loud. You can use your voice and nobody, you're not distracting anybody. And sometimes that's so helpful. So if you're going to test in a testing center, check it out beforehand and see if there's one locally that lets you be in a private room by yourself. Because you can hear the difference while you might not see the difference in writing. Does that make sense?
Is a read aloud help for the understanding?
Yeah, because you can hear it. And when we do grammar, it's same thing. Sometimes when you say a sentence out loud, you know exactly where the punctuation should go. But if you're reading it, it's not as easy. You know, don't get me wrong, semicolon, I have loved watching blah, 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 blah. If you're reading that, you may not know that that could be something else. But if you say it, then you kind of know what punctuation could be there. It's really interesting, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we do grammar. All right, let's do number 3. What does the author's word choice in paragraph 3 reveal about his purpose? Does he exaggerate his feelings to emphasize his attitude toward playoff officials? And that's this one right here that we just were looking at. Does he use jargon? And jargon would be words that we may not normally use to show his familiarity with the sport. He mentions kindergarten basketball to appeal to elementary school coaches, or he writes in a detached academic style that indicates research and knowledge. This guy is mad. He didn't like the calls that the officials made during a game. He's mad about it. He thinks that the calls were wrong. Is he going to be detached and academic?
How about A?
I like A. Because look
D.
at this.
D.
Yeah. Makes me sick to my stomach. Which one do you like?
D.
So he is not detached. He is very much in this. He's very emotional about it. And it's an opinion piece, so he did not do any research. He might be really knowledgeable about the game, but in this piece, he's just popping off. He's complaining because he doesn't think the referees made the right calls. I think his team lost. And he thinks that if the referees had made the right calls, his team would have won. So he disagrees. It's very interesting. It's a tough one, but A is good. He exaggerates his feelings to emphasize his attitude. Makes me sick to my stomach. Do you think he really got sick to his stomach?
No.
Too much.
No.
He's so extra. He's so extra to explain.
Exactly. It's over the top. This poor man, he wasn't sick. He wasn't throwing up. He was just, oh, it makes me sick to my stomach the way they called those plays. All right, dude, we get it. You're mad. And that's exactly it. So A, he exaggerates his feelings. All right, in paragraph 5, it's bogus. Yep, that's it. What statement best explains the impact of that short paragraph? So it might help to go up just a little bit and read the last sentence in front of it. The new NBA officiating rules have been created in order to forge a game where everyone can be safe, where a 6'3" shooter can fearlessly drive at a 7'1" behemoth because he knows he'll be protected by the refs. It's bogus. So he's talking about they put some safety rules into place and he thinks it's ridiculous. The short paragraph prevents it from having a strong impact. The short paragraph and the word bogus emphasize his dislike. The word bogus emphasizes the author's frustration with unequal pay, or the short paragraph and the word bogus subdue an angry tone. Looking at D, is he still angry? He's still pretty mad, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so get rid of D. Nothing in this article is making him less angry. So we're going to get rid of D. The
How
word
about C?
D.
is now, is there anything about unequal pay?
Oh, okay.
We did see this. One guy in a team's locker room can make 16 million and have a locker next to a guy who makes 85,000. But so he just dismissed this whole thing. So he's not really talking about team pay. Then he goes on, you know, someone who is 6'3" can fearlessly drive at someone who's 7'1" because he'll be protected by the refs. It's bogus. So he doesn't think anybody should be protected. He thinks it should be an all-out rumble on the court.
How about B?
D. No,
Yes.
D. D.
So not D because it's not subduing. Subduing means to lessen. He's still mad. He's very mad. And that did not make him less mad. But this one, perfect. Apparently he would like basketball with no officials, which doesn't make sense because then you have no rules. But that's what he would like. And we thought this one was going to be easy, huh? I don't watch basketball, so I don't know half of what he's talking about. On the basis of the author's word choice in paragraph 6, which statement best describes his attitude toward NBA basketball during previous decades? So this one will go over to 6. When you look at documentaries that show basketball from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the game has completely changed. The playoff series between the Knicks and Reggie Miller's Pacers could never happen in today's league. Larry Bird and Dr. J would never have gotten into fights in today's league. Guys like the Bad Boy Pistons, Bill Laimbeer, Kurt Rambis, and Kevin McHale could never exist in today's league. And it's a shame. So apparently he's saying here that in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the players could fight on the court. And he thought that was great. And now with more rules, they cannot. So if we come back down here, what best describes his attitude? Does he appreciate the playing style? Does he respect the players? Is he ashamed of the players? Or does he admire the players? So
I'm going with D.
D.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah, he liked that they could fight and be obnoxious. And, you know, rules are made because somebody got injured most of the time. And if you want to watch a fight on the court, don't you go to wrestling or something or a boxing match? Not basketball.